Welcome, everyone. I'm Maria, if we haven't met yet, and I help with marketing at Canadian Pine Pollen. And so if you've messaged on Instagram or you've seen the email newsletters, you're communicating with me. But I just want to welcome everyone. Thanks for coming on our community conversations. We do this every Tuesday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And just a reminder that we are recording so that we can upload the recording to YouTube. So if you can't meet us on a Tuesday, we always upload the topic to stream on YouTube for a replay. So I'll just like to introduce Dr. Saeed and Burgess. Dr. Saeed will be hosting the call today, talking about our new gold label tincture. So Dr. Saeed, I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Our gold label tincture, it's been in the works for quite a while. Before I jump on that, I just want to acknowledge everybody that's on the call too. Hey, Ollie, Yuval, and Burge. Thanks. Burge is sitting probably, which office are you on that office? Like we're in the same building, but we just happen to be in different, different computers, right?
The QE.
We're actually in the clinic working on sending a package out to Germany for the BIOFACH show that we're going there. It's an organic show, so we're going to introduce Pine Pollen there in the Canadian pavilion.
February. What's the February 13th?
February 13th starts. Yeah, we leave on February 10th. So again, thanks. Thanks for that.
Followers want to come, are in the area and they want to come in for a day. I'm sure we can set them up with a pass if that's something they're interested in.
If anybody that's in the area that gets this and they want to come in. So today we want to talk about this baby, Canadian Pine Pollen gold label. And maybe I just take my blower back. Wait, how do I do that?
That label is so shiny, you get like a huge reflection too.
Yeah, there we go. So that's the gold label. That's our tincture. And for the longest time, we used to make our tinctures as Ponderosa, and we still make that, and Lodgepole, and we still make both of these. So the black label and the maroon, and each one of them had its own species. So Lodgepole is a different species. It's higher in elevation. Ponderosa is more accustomed to lower elevations and warmer climate. So what we did with our gold label, there's a couple of changes that's happened with the gold label. One is that it's a combination of both, half 50-50 of those two species. But what's more interesting about it, above and beyond that, is it's a stronger tincture. It's a 50% stronger tincture. It's a 1-to-4, whereas those other two are 1-to-6s. So there's 1 gram of pine pollen for every 6 mils of liquid, whereas this one there's 1 gram for every 4 mils of liquid. So this is 250 milligram per ml. Those were 166 milligram per ml. And the way we've been able to achieve that with the gold label is tinctures obviously are the best way to get active ingredients into you. So we've modified our processing a tad bit to get this. And we do this still the same step in old school, putting the powder with alcohol and pressing that to get the first extraction. And then the second extraction, we do it in water and glycerin with ultrasound. And that is able to actually extract a whole lot more. But then we concentrate that and break that down to a 1-to-1 ratio, and then mix this first alcohol with the finished product. So we've been able to concentrate more of those complex sugars. We've been able to extract it more by using the ultrasound, and also concentrate it more. So what you will find in these gold label ones, most of our tinctures now, if you look at the bottom of it, there's a little bit of a residue that comes up. I actually shook this before I showed it to you, but maybe this one you can kind of, in the video it's tougher to say because of the brown bottle, but So we are able to actually knock out some of these molecules from the cell walls of the pollen and concentrate it better in the tinctures. And definitely this is a more concentrated. And the other thing about it is that when we applied for an NPN with Health Canada, we went for the mixture of the two. It would be a lot more complicated to get like one NPN for one product and then one NPN for the other one, whereas it was in a starting material. It had taken us 4 years to get it into the Canadian Encyclopedia. So it just made it so much easier to go for a combination of the two, especially because from a nutritional standpoint, they're pretty much the same, but Ponderosa covers some of the brassinosteroids, the hormones that Lodgepole doesn't have, and Lodgepole covers some of the ones that Ponderosa doesn't have, and the two balance each other pretty well. So it's a really nice balanced. If you have an idea of like the feminine, the masculine differences between Lodgepole and Ponderosa, it's like a good balance of the two, but it's a more concentrated one, and it's the first tincture in Canada that actually has NPN natural product number, specifically for improving chi, which is energy, and balancing the hormones. That's not part of the NPN, but balancing the hormones, we know it improves the chi by balancing the hormones. So cool thing about that, I did another like research, just looked into the last set of hormone analysis that we had on these. And one thing that had escaped me, which was interesting, you know, they've always said that, hey, the pollen has testosterone, it has DHEA, it has androstenedione, and it has progesterone, but it also has some estriol, so which is estrogen, right? So it's a really nice balance of all the hormones, which makes sense because, you know, estrogen does some work in the male body as well as it does in the female, and vice versa with testosterone. And that's really the bottom line with the gold label. So if you got any questions about it, or Burgess, if you had any other comments that you want to add, Burgess does pretty much all the production on these. So if you have any specific questions about how and what kind of work it goes into it, each run is about a month because you lay it in alcohol for about 3 weeks before you actually 1 week process it with the ultrasounds and the extraction tanks that we use to get the finished product and mix them together. So it takes at least four weeks for the full cycle.
Yeah, about 5 weeks once you sits in, you know, in the alcohol for about 4 weeks, and then the processing part of it. Yeah, so actually, yeah, no, it's a really nice product. It's just a higher potency. And just to circle back to what Saeed was saying, it's not that one Ponderosa contains things that Lodgepole doesn't, or Lodgepole contains things that Ponderosa doesn't. It's just the ratios of certain aspects that are higher in one than the other. So I don't think you would be taking one and missing out on specific things, but it's just a way to kind of, it's finding the equilibrium, and it's balancing it out in a way. The nice thing about taking the Lodgepole for a period of time and then taking the Ponderosa for a period of time, it's nice to be able to switch between the two, but this is just a way to get it a balanced way and a higher potency. So yeah, I guess it's more of a medicinal dosage, I would say, is really.
Yeah, if you're looking at potency and you're looking at active ingredient, this has got more pollen per drop or full. It's got 50% more. So it's like 1.5 times the strength of any of these two.
Yeah. And to be completely transparent, initially this was released to like naturopaths and doctors exclusively. And we just decided, because it was such a desired product and there was a lot of people reaching out to us and wanting this product, that, you know, we thought that we would release it to the public as well.
Yeah, and then the dosing that we have on this is just a much wider dosage than the other labels. You were able to get 2 mils to 4 mils 1 to 3 times a day. So it starts from 2 mils all the way to 12 mils, which is a range. So and the reason we, like, you know, it was supposed to be just for naturopaths, so they would have more of a range to work with a patient. If, you know, let's say they want to balance someone's, you know, hormones during andropause and menopause, and they're using pine pollen, but a lot of naturopathic doctors, they try to just bring in 2 or 3 different things for the patient. So if they were doing specifically targeting progesterone with, let's say, chasteberry, or estrogen with black cohosh, and they wanted to add in pine pollen for the testosterone, then they would have a better range of playing around. If someone's typically testosterone was showing lower, they might go higher up in the pine pollen. If their estrogen was showing lower, they might go higher up and play around with different herbs. So that's why we got the biggest range into this, which means that, you know, depending on what you want to use it for, you can definitely go very low dose, just 2 mils once a day, and see some impact from it. If your testosterone levels are already great, or you're at the beginning of andropause where the fatigue is coming in and the slowness is coming in, but you're not noticing such a drop in muscle mass, you can start slow. So if you're in your 40s and whatnot, but if you're older, in your 50s, and andropause and menopausal symptoms are coming, and you're getting hot flashes, or you're losing muscle mass, and exercise recovery is not the same, then you can go higher dose with this. So it gives you a good playroom with that dosing structure.
Yeah,
And
I like about it,
with this too.
it's I like it for travel. Like, you're taking that, and you know, you can get away taking less because of the potency, and you know, you can stretch it a lot longer by having it. So it's just less things you got to pack with you as well. So that's one good thing about it. I enjoy it. And yeah, just coming back to Saeed, yeah, like, you know, we got a lot of physicians that are using the product, and they'll buy it in 1 liter bottles. Like, they'll sell it wholesale to 1 liter bottles. So they can do the dispensary stuff, and, you know, and mix it with different botanicals to achieve different things for specific patients.
Yeah. This is not, it doesn't mean we're going to stop those 2 other productions, because we know that, some individuals, and also I've recommended this many times, where you would like cycle one with the other, to just, with anything that's an adaptogen that your body adapts to stress. It's a good idea to take breaks and cycle. So that's one way to take, like, if you're taking this long term, one way to do that would be cycling the 2 different species, or cycling the pollen and the tincture, or cycling like a few days on the tincture and a few days off, or cycling the tincture with the pollen. So you can play around quite a bit with the anything that's boosting your energy in a way, because you don't want to exhaust you. You want to push, and that's the beauty of pine pollen. It's a chi tonic, so it's not a yang stimulant. It's not going to deplete you over time using. Whereas some of the stronger ones, like Tribulus, Tonkat, these can actually like drive your testosterone so high, then you get a crash. And
yeah, and it's also like, the energies of the 2 are quite a bit different as well too, right? So one person might resonate with one more than the other. So, you might get a more favorable response by taking one over the other, and by keeping them separate, it's still the ability to just go with the one that you feel might be better suited to you. And that might just be in a specific time, or it could be over a long period of time. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Do you guys any thoughts or any questions about your experience with pine pollen, or your thoughts about questions about our new release and why we did it and how we did it?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there a point where you can take too much, like a toxicity level with pine pollen?
There's a safety trial on pine pollen, and it's done with the pollen itself. It hasn't been done with the tincture. So, and then the toxicity level, there's no toxicity per se, in the sense of like organ failure, this, that, or like something called an LD50, which is lethal dose 50, meaning that a lethal dose that you would give to X number of people, and 50% of them would die. So toxicity typically is measured as an LD50 with a lot of drugs. And then with herbs, the same thing. There is the idea of LD50, and typically that's done in animal studies where they feed, let's say, milk thistle extract to extend that it causes liver toxicity or kidney failure, or they would use the next herb and this and that. So there's no LD50 established with pine pollen, but we know over 15 grams per serving per day. So that would be, if you think about it, this is 250 milligram per mil. So to get 15 grams, 15 times 4, what is that?
60.
60.
60. So that would be like just over 60% of this. So if you take 60% of this in a shot, you'll get diarrhea, and that's basically what has been shown to happen.
So just the diarrhea, nothing else.
Nothing else that's been recorded. Yeah, so it's a pretty safe. It's a food, right? Like if you overdo a food, the first thing that's your body is going to respond to is going to be the bugs. The bugs are going to be like, well, some of them are going to love it, some of them are not, and it's going to change something about your gut microbiome, and it's going to want to push it out, which is the diarrhea, right? So that's the only thing that's been shown, but no adverse reactions. And then there is the allergies, right? The idea of there's 3% of the population that's allergic to it and is going to have sooner or later, if they are allergic to it, they will show some symptoms, maybe tingling, maybe which our labels say don't consume it if you're allergic to it. But yeah, no toxicity. You can get fatigue from overusing it, which is why we cycle. And by fatigue I mean the product doesn't respond anymore. You take it, but you don't feel that initial elevation you felt from it. So to avoid that, the idea is you cycle. You take 5 days on, 2 days off, or you take 2-3 weeks on, 2-3 weeks off, and you just, or a week off, and then you come back 2-3 weeks, depending on, again, what you're trying to achieve with it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question. Would you recommend that someone start with the original Lodgepole or Ponderosa before trying the gold label, or would you want to start with the gold?
The stronger your symptoms are that you're trying to tackle, the stronger your testosterone, low testosterone symptoms are, or low hormone symptoms are. Obviously, the more you need to do. Either that more means more frequency of this, or more concentration in the gold label, right? So that's where you would play around. So like, let's say if you were just old school and you've been taking any of these two products, if you're responding, there's no reason to switch unless you want to take the advantage of taking less alcohol in your system, which this offers, right? So because it's more concentrated, obviously you're gonna need less of the final fluid, so you get less alcohol with it. But you can achieve pretty much what you could do with this as you would do with this, except that the amount that you might end up consuming in a day would be different. So like what you can achieve with 4 mils of this, you can achieve with 6 mils of this.
Yeah.
That's really the main difference between these two. And the other thing is the combination of the two. So you're getting more of a balance. So I personally, if I was new into the pine pollen world, I would probably go with the gold label one. Again, because it's a more of a potent product. So you're going to notice more of an improvement, and it's more reasonably priced actually. Like for being 50% stronger, it's only 25% more expensive. So you're getting 25 mils of free product compared to the old ones that we had.
And how would you incorporate using the powder and the tincture? Like, would you recommend tincture morning, powder afternoon, evening, or because I know a lot of customers use both?
Yeah, for adaptogens, the timing, if the one piece of advice that I can do general would be, if you find it too stimulating, in the sense that it's impacting your sleep, then try to do it closer or before 2 p.m. Pine pollen is generally a yin tonic. It supportive, nutritive to qi. So it can actually improve quality of sleep. So some people notice that when they take it later on, it improves their quality of sleep. But if you're alternating, you want most of your energy during the day, I would do the tincture in the morning, the powder at nighttime. That would be one way of combining two. Or on the days that you expect more of your body, let's say you don't have any symptoms, right? You're not menopausal or andropausal, you don't have low libido, you don't have muscle loss, you don't have hot flashes, you don't have any of the things that are like completely low states, but you're moving into that state, so you want to support it. In a scenario like that, if you're supporting, then you probably want to take, you know, the powders, and if you're combining it, if you're noticing a little bit more symptoms, that's where you bring in the tincture. And if you have more symptoms, then you can actually do like alternating tincture powder at the same time. So it really comes down to how, like, going back to this idea of there is a lot of intuitive aspects of health that when we talk about supplements, we don't bring into picture. We say A for B, right? We say pine pollen for andropause or menopause. But the key is, how does my individual body respond to this? And being in tune with your body and testing it and trying it to see what is the right dose for you, what's the right timing for you is the key thing. So that's really the overarching principle that I can give you. Try it at least at the lowest level recommended, which is 2 mils. Ideally, I would do 2 mils twice a day if you're new to this, and give it a go for a while until your body tells you, do I need more or do I need less? Does that answer the question, Maria? I think I went a little bit on tangent there.
No, it's good. I think it's ultimately just getting back to our last conversation was like, you know, from last week, is just listening to your body as well. And in order to really understand how this product is reacting with you, it's basically trial and error. So, you know, you just have to get accustomed to it, understand how you feel on it, manage your dosages. Some people swear by the powder and they don't necessarily feel that the tincture gives them the same you know, energy boost as it would. And some people are the opposite way around. I mean, there's some nice things about the powder that you're not going to achieve by getting the tincture. Obviously, the concentration is not as high for the androgenic benefits. And it's also a little bit less efficient for the delivery system, but you're also receiving a lot of good bacteria that's really good for your gut flora. There's a lot of enzymatic factors of it with the enzymes that's in the pine pollen for digestion and whatnot. And there's a lot of good things about enzymes out there. So that's really cool. And then there's also the factor that the pine pollen is great for detoxification as a binding agent. So, you know, it's also a great way to kind of draw some of those toxins from your body at the same time. So, yeah, it just really depends on the individual, and it's getting accustomed to a rhythm that really suits their lifestyle and their body type most effectively.
Talking about the gut bacteria, there's actually, I wasn't aware of this. Last week, I had a meeting with Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine because they were interested in doing research. And now they're suggesting maybe let's do some prospective studies where, you know, we would feed this to different individuals that are interested and measure their basics like blood levels, testosterone, and do before and after. But also, there is a potential grant for doing IBD, irritable bowel disease research, because a couple of animal studies have shown the polysaccharides, complex sugars in pine pollen, can modify gut microflora, increase gap junctions, which is the space, tight junctions, which is the holding of the space between the cells, so that things don't leak into the system. So they improve the leaky gut aspect of IBD. So they wanted to do research. And what's cool about our new extraction process is that it's knocking out. So all the cloudiness that you see in the tinctures compared to the old school when we didn't have the ultrasound, the cloudiness is those complex sugars that's coming out. So you're able to get, so you'll get before we used to say like, you know, the powders, you get more of a gut reaction and the tincture less of it. But I think now with our new extraction facility, we can get just as much gut microbiome response. You just won't be able to have that binding aspect of the pollen itself in the gut. So yeah, that's the other thing about the tinctures is now they have those polysaccharides, which is super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. That's really cool.
And to the same extent, the mushroom tinctures will have more polysaccharides, and that's really the working, the holy grail of mushrooms: polysaccharides, complex sugars.
We're going to work on a video for doing a little production facility tour, Ollie, so you can take a look at the ultrasonic machines.
I would love to see this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another good point. Just getting back to, you know, we do get questions from sometimes, and we do small batch manufacture. So, you know, not every batch is exactly the same, but it's very consistent. But also just having sometimes there is a little bit of that cloudiness to it and that haze, and, you know, just to be completely, like we were mentioning, those are polysaccharides, which is, you know, if anything, if you shake the tincture up, you know, it's basically just gonna absorb back into the liquid. And yeah, I mean, that's nothing to be concerned about.
Hey, are there any other questions for Dr. Saeed or Burgess today? I think we're good. So thanks so much for coming online and joining our community conversation next week. So Ollie, since you're the only one online still, we were going to do a draw for a free tincture.
Okay.
Win.
All right. Oh, wicked. That's cool.
We did have another participant, but he probably left early. Also just wanted to remind everyone that next week we're going to be doing our conversation on the reishi tincture. Do you want to talk about that, Saeed or Burgess?
Yeah, let Saeed talk. You know what, when it comes to the benefits of reishi, I feel like Saeed is very knowledgeable about that, so I'll let him take the lead on that.
Just do a short intro about what we're going to talk about.
A short intro about reishi. Reishi is the queen of mushrooms. I like to think of it as reishi as the palace of the mind, because it has a calming effect on the mind. It has more of brings you into zone, but also it has much like every other mushroom, the immune stimulating aspect of mushrooms in cancer prevention. But one thing that reishi shines for the most is that that nurturing aspect of the brain activity. So somewhat of a blend between, I think of reishi as the blend between lion's mane and chaga. It just blends the two the most, and historically it's got the most amount of research of any of the mushrooms. It's got the most amount of clinical studies, double-blind placebos, and human trials of anything, and the best safety record. It's just not as palatable as other edible mushrooms.
Is it classified as a nootropic then?
It's a nootropic, yeah.
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah. And what's really cool is the source, you know, it's you know, obviously it's coming from Canadian forests, and we're using the whole fruiting body as well. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about you guys is you're keeping your product within Canada. You're sourcing from Canada.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
I mean, that's the premise of our company, and yeah, just yeah, bringing knowledge to just what we have in our own backyard is such a strong, you know, it's one of our mission statements, really, you know. So
yeah, and it's a big struggle trying to do that in terms of like, there is a lot out there. That is, we were just having this conversation with Burgess about one of our other products, Pine Needle. You know, it's an amazing product, pine and spruce, but typically in the herbalist world or in the naturopathic world, when we think about supporting the immune system of the lungs, there's so many other herbs that we use. A lot of them cultivated, a lot of them European herbs, not North American, but we have become accustomed to it and they have more clinical trials. But there's such a limitation with bringing the indigenous knowledge of these herbs and then turning them into a product that could be marketed for current conditions and uses. So there is indigenous references for using spruce and pine needles for upper respiratory tracts, but the research that's on that is limited to cell studies and animal studies. So like it's got long ways to go before it becomes human clinical trials and whatnot. So
Yeah.
there is a challenge. So we work in kind of like, that's our unique offering, being able to offer these local plants.
Yeah, and just bringing awareness to it and education, and then over time, I feel like these things will get attention that they wouldn't normally get, and they can become a little bit more mainstream and put more value on our forests.
Well,
Cool.
thanks everyone for joining this week. We really appreciate you showing up, and we'll stick around to answer any questions once the recording stopped. But yeah, we'll hope to see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Maria.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for
Maria.
hosting.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Ollie. Thanks, Andrea, for popping in.